Heart of the Wolf, a steamy paranormal romance novel by author A. Mariposa. Chapter 13.
Gareth paced up and down the driveway outside of Jack's auto repair. His cell phone was raised to his ear. He listened to it ring. Inside, on a wooden bench in the break room, her head propped up on his jacket, Maddie lay unconscious. It wasn't the most comfortable place to take a nap, but he didn't have a couch she could lay on. He didn't like customers to be too comfortable around his shop. Then they hung around longer. Her cheeks were pale, but her pulse was steady. He suspected what the problem might be, but he didn't want to assume anything before he talked to his mom again. If Gareth craned his neck, he could see through the break room door. He glimpsed Vin sitting next to Maddie on a foldable plastic chair, scrolling through his phone. A bemused half-smile crossed Gareth's face. The kid was probably looking up home remedies for fainting online. Luckily, Gareth was well-versed in first aid, CPR, and other survival skills from his time in the army. He wanted to laugh. Fuck the internet. He was the damned home remedy. He remembered Vin's look of shock when he carried Maddie from his office into the break room. Vin had just sat down at a small card table with a meatball sandwich for lunch. He looked like he was about to watch an episode of something on his phone. Joker was eagerly sitting by his feet, her puppy eyes trained on the meatballs, a bit of drool puddling on the floor between her paws. When Vin saw Maddie, he sat up straight and almost dropped his sandwich.
Whoa, what happened? She okay?
She got dizzy. Gonna lay her down here for a minute.
Is she all right? Did she hit her head?
No. I'm gonna make a phone call. Watch her for me?
Sure thing, boss.
Vin looked a little pale and nervous, but he seemed determined to help. Don't you go passing out on me, too, Gareth growled as he grabbed his phone from his jacket pocket. Then he folded up the flannel jacket and tucked it under Maddie's head. I'll be right back. Come get me if she wakes up. Gareth left the break room, his cell phone in hand. He walked through the garage to the driveway before dialing. He had his suspicions about what might have caused Maddie to faint, but that was wolf business, stuff that Vin wouldn't understand. As the phone rang and rang, Gareth paced up and down in front of the shop, trying to stay calm. If everything his mom said was true, then maybe all this fucking around had triggered Maddie's change. It might be happening a lot faster than he originally assumed. He didn't know what to expect. When he tried to remember his first werewolf change, all he remembered was being ravenously hungry and horny all the time. But maybe that was just called being a teenage boy. Finally, the phone picked up.
Mijo. ¿Qué tal? 2 calls in one day. Now I know something happened.
Hola, mama. Quick question for you. It's about that girl. The one I told you about before.
Yes. The wolf girl. She must be una persona muy preciosa para ti.
Gareth paused. He spoke all right Spanglish, but it took a second to understand what his mom said. Then it came to him. She must be a very precious person to you. His mom's voice was laced with heavy implication. He couldn't deny it, but he didn't want to say too much more. His mother was an intelligent woman. She would put it all together if he gave up too much. He hadn't called her since her birthday, and here he was calling twice in the same morning about a girl. Yeah, she knew something was up. He asked quickly, "So what are the signs of the change?"
I already told you a few signs. Can you be more specific?
This girl. She's having dizzy spells, like she will faint suddenly. His mother made a clucking sound with her tongue as she thought. He could almost imagine her pursing her lips with one hand propped up on her hip.
I am no doctor, mijo, but wolves need to eat. Use your head. The change takes a lot of energy. You know this is true. You don't need me to tell you. So she might be burning a lot of calories in preparation for the change. If she's not eating enough, because she doesn't know her own body, she might pass out from hunger. So make sure she eats. And if she keeps fainting, for God's sake, take her to a hospital.
Yeah, trying to avoid that unless I have to.
Don't be stubborn. Use your head and be safe, mijo.
What else? What happens when a wolf starts to change for the first time?
Let me think. Increased energy, or she might sleep a lot, vivid dreams, and she might find smells and sounds to be very strong. Sometimes it starts off slow with little changes like that, then suddenly, boom, hit full transformation, not necessarily at the full moon. Ju said she was very delayed, so hard to say. It might be especially hard on her. So what do you think? Is she starting?
I don't know. Maybe.
I will send you a care package. That's your address?
Gareth hesitated. It's all right, Mama. Just text me a list of things. I'll buy them. His mother sighed.
My mysterious son. You got Whole Foods out there, mijo?
Just basic groceries.
Basic groceries? So, you're in the country somewhere?
Mom, I can't tell you.
Okay. I will let it go, for now. But I'm so curious where you live now. Someday, I'm going to visit you and meet this girl who's got you so worried.
Sure, Mom. Whatever you say. I gotta go. Text me the list.
Okay. Hasta luego.
He hung up the phone and started through the garage, his muscles strung tight as a bow, unable to hide the tension running through his body. He didn't know much about Maddie's food habits. She wasn't skinny or emaciated like some girls. Actually, her body was all soft feminine curves, with a delicious jiggle that made him want to sink his teeth into her thighs. But she probably didn't eat a lot of nutritious food, considering her low income. That's why he bought her groceries that morning. He remembered her fridge was empty, but maybe she hadn't eaten yet today? He entered the break room at a fast pace. Vin looked up startled from his phone. He was watching a YouTube video on how to resuscitate a drowning victim. Joker, the dog, was sitting under the kitchen table staring intently at Vin's meatball sandwich. Better keep an eye on your lunch, Gareth said. Dog's looking pretty keen.
Yeah, I know, I see her. She's a super chill puppy. Hey, we could use a shop dog. So what did you find out? Who'd you call?
Not a doctor, but someone just as good, Gareth grinned, thinking of his mom's words. It's probably low blood sugar. We just gotta wait, I guess. Then make sure she eats something when she wakes up. Gareth opened up his iron gray locker, where he kept his work overalls, some deodorant, and a change of clothes. On the shelf above his clothes was a little box where he dumped his wallet and keys. He grabbed a $20 bill out of his wallet. Then he shut the metal door with a slam. I'm going to the gas station. I'll be right back. If she wakes up, make sure she doesn't move around too much. She could fall again.
Where are you going?
Getting some sugar. He left the break room and jogged through the shop, dodging around the side of the Mercedes, then out into the brisk mountain air. It was just past noon. White nimbus clouds filled the crisp blue sky. Across the highway from the garage stood a wall of solid forest, where frost still covered the grass in the shade. Still, it was a pleasant day in the mountains. It took Gareth 5 minutes to cross the parking lot to the gas station, walk into the tiny convenience store, and grab a bag of M&Ms off the shelf. An old Asian man named Johnny was sitting at the register, smoking a cigarette and reading a newspaper. He was covered head to toe in tattoos. The ink had bled together on his wrinkled skin to resemble wave-like patterns or big blotches. He and his wife owned the gas station and the small convenience store attached to it. The convenience store was called Sunshine Grocery, but the locals referred to it as Tiny Costco. Mr. and Mrs. Sato bought Costco bulk goods and resold them at a higher price, so folks didn't have to drive downriver. Gareth had shopped there plenty of times. It was a great service. Hey, Johnny, he said as he threw down the pack of candy and a $20 bill. How's your weekend going?
Slow as shit. Hey G, you read the paper. There was a murder down the road. 5 men, killed by a wolf. It got me thinking. I wonder why a lone wolf kills 5 men.
What's that? Like a riddle. Johnny blew out a ring of smoke. He tapped his cigarette in the ashtray by his elbow. Gareth waited. Some people knew about werewolves, but it wasn't an everyday topic of conversation. He wondered if Johnny was an avid reader of the werewolf subreddits online.
No riddle. I think it was gang execution. Back when I was a Yakuza, bad employees everywhere, bad for business, so you get them all together in one room and take them out in one hit. Problem solved. If you join up but you waste time and money, you don't live long.
Why not just fire them? Gareth asked with a side grin. Johnny laughed.
Yakuza don't get fired, Yakuza get dead.
Right. Something to think about. I don't think there's a mafia this far out, though. We're pretty far in the sticks. Johnny shrugged.
Plenty of drugs around the casino, that's my opinion anyway.
Gareth took his change and waved goodbye, then headed back to the shop, his mind returning to Maddie. When he reached the break room, Vin was still sitting next to her in his fold-out chair. Maddie was still on the bench, small and pale. Gareth knelt next to her, his face drawn into a thoughtful frown. His hand rested against her forehead, his thumb feathering against her temple. Her pulse was steady, her breathing deep and even. She didn't have a fever. She didn't smell sick to his wolf senses, and yet something about her scent was subtly different. It made his blood stir. He told himself it was his imagination, and yet, could it be? The change was already happening. So soon? His brow knitted with worry. Vin scooted his plastic chair a little closer to Gareth next to the bench. His eyes flickered over Maddie's generous chest area, which was distracting even through her oversized sweatshirt. Then he looked studiously at the ground. Gareth noticed the look but didn't say anything. He didn't like it, but he couldn't really expect anything from the kid. Only a goddamn saint would fail to notice her curvaceous proportions.
She your girl, boss? Are you guys dating?
Yeah, something like that.
I didn't know you were seeing anyone. So how did you two meet?
Eat your sandwich, Vin.
Right. Okay, just saying, you never talk about yourself. I didn't know you had a girl. Thought you were just kinda more of a...
Gareth raised an eyebrow, turning to look at his employee. You thought I was what?
I don't know. I just figured you were a Netflix and chill type of guy.
Gareth, honestly, did not know what to say about that. Then Vin pointed at Maddie on the bench. He looked more than a little relieved to change the subject.
Oh, look, she moved. I think she's waking up.
Gareth looked down at the bench. He gazed intently at Maddie's face as she stirred. Her eyelids fluttered. Then he half turned to Vin and reached out his arm. Hand me a water bottle.
Maddie opened her eyes. She blinked woozily as she gazed up at the ceiling. A hand swam into her line of vision, offering her a bottle of Arrowhead water.
Easy. You're okay. Just go slow.
He helped her wrap her fingers around the bottle. Her head was throbbing. What's wrong with me?
Hypoglycemia.
Hypo what?
That's low blood sugar. But you're doing fine. You just gotta eat something.
He helped her into a sitting position. Maddie's grip was pathetically weak on the water bottle. She tried to undo the cap, but her fingers weren't working quite right. Gareth took the bottle back and opened it for her, then passed it to her lips. Maddie took a few deep sips. The water cleared her head a bit. She met his warm, hazel gaze. Gareth knelt next to the bench where she was sitting. It was a long way for such a tall man to bend down. His shoulders and chest were like a wall blocking out the rest of the room. His big hand rested on her knee. She could feel the gentleness of his touch through her leggings. Just that small gesture sent a spiral of tenderness through her belly. Somehow, it was doubly endearing to see such a rugged man show so much concern. She felt herself melt a little. Then he tore open a bag of M&Ms. He spilled a few into her hand. He waited as she chewed on the candy and swallowed. She felt a little self-conscious. By his intent gaze, she was certain he wouldn't let up until she finished the whole bag. She ate a few more.
She's looking a lot better.
Maddie glanced over and recognized the Herstein face of Gareth's young employee, Vin, standing a few feet away. The young man was glancing between her and Gareth, obviously gauging their relationship. Maddie wondered if he had ever seen Gareth act this way around anyone before. He almost seemed amused by it. He crossed his arms and put a hand to his chin, hiding a grin. What happened? Maddie said, blinking in the harsh overhead light.
You passed out. Like I said, it's probably low blood sugar. You eaten yet today?
No, not really, she said with a wince.
That's probably it then.
If she wants, she can have some of my sandwich, or like half of it.
Gareth glanced over his shoulder with a raised eyebrow. Maddie rushed to say, "No, I don't want to take your lunch. The candy is enough. I feel much better already. I should really get home. Thanks, though." Vin shrugged.
Cool, well, glad you're feeling better.
Then he went back to the table where his sandwich and a begging Joker was waiting. Gareth turned back to Maddie.
You sure you're feeling all right?
Yeah. I was just dizzy for a moment.
You still dizzy?
I mean, a little bit. In truth, the thought of food made her feel nauseous. Chewing and swallowing the candy was a bit of a challenge, but she knew Gareth was right. She had likely passed out from low blood sugar. She had skipped breakfast that morning, and she walked 2 miles up the highway to the car garage on an empty stomach. She was probably hungrier than she thought. She hadn't slept very well last night, plus all the stress from their fight. So it was probably a little bit of everything.
You think you can walk to the car? I'll drive you back home.
Yeah, I can do that. A furry head bumped her hand. With a grin, Maddie looked down at Joker, who was crowding close to the bench and wagging her tail. "Aw, I didn't forget about you." Maddie grinned and scratched the dog's ears. Then she picked up Joker's leash. As she petted Joker, she avoided meeting Gareth's eyes. She felt shy. Kind of embarrassed. I actually fainted while he was kissing me, she thought, trying not to blush. Like something out of a really bad romance novel. How pathetic. She wanted him to take her seriously and respect her as an independent adult. But now he probably thought she was some frail invalid. Gareth got his keys and wallet out of his locker, then he put on his sunglasses. With his eyes hidden behind the dark glasses, he instantly became mysterious and unapproachable. She gazed up at him, watching him get ready. Her eyes traveled over his tatted arms, bulked-out shoulders, and loose hair. As she watched, he tied his hair back at the base of his neck in a loose, low, messy bun. Then he pulled on his heavy flannel jacket with fleece lining. He held out his hand. She took it and he pulled her to her feet.
I'll be back in a few, Vin.
No worries, boss.
Vin bit into his sandwich. He was sitting at the little card table watching videos online. He ignored Gareth and Maddie as they left the break room. Maddie followed Gareth through the garage, blinking in the harsh overhead lights. She felt a little nervous as she followed him to the Camaro out front. She wondered if she was getting a migraine. The big, white fluorescent bulbs that illuminated the garage seemed brighter than she remembered, and the scent of oil and rubber was overpowering. If she didn't know any better, she would think she was pregnant. Except she was a virgin. So that was impossible. Gareth unlocked the passenger side door and let her into the Camaro. Then he climbed into the other side of the car. She noticed the missing window was replaced on the passenger side. The engine choked to life. Maddie cocked her head slightly and listened. The engine sounded smoother than she remembered. The car didn't shake or shudder quite as much, and the roar was more subdued. She also noticed his door shut and locked smoothly. "Did you do some work on the car?" she asked.
A bit. Yesterday. Got the new passenger side window in, replaced the engine belt and a few spark plugs. Nothing too crazy.
"It sounds better, I can tell." He grinned as he pulled out the driveway.
Thanks, sweetheart. Just keeping my hands busy.
Maddie blushed. She didn't know what to say to that. She glanced out the window as he pulled onto Highway 20 and turned in the direction of her trailer. After a bit of hesitation, she asked, "So we're just friends?"
Yup.
It was not exactly the outcome Maddie had been hoping for. But she knew it was better for her in the long run. She needed to slow down. After the past few days, she needed some time to breathe. She didn't function well when she was overwhelmed, and in her life, that happened often. Reflecting back on their conversation, she knew Gareth was right. In the long run, she needed to move out and leave Dean behind. But she needed to go at her own pace. Which, considering every other area of her life, was a bit delayed. She didn't even have a driver's license. It was a bit embarrassing. Some girls her age were already sophomores in college. She would be turning 20 next year. She was old enough to move out. She should want to. But what Gareth suggested felt more like jumping off a cliff. We don't have to be friends. If you'd rather break things off completely, I understand.
I'm not doing that.
Maddie wondered if he meant his words. He glanced over at her. She couldn't read his eyes with his sunglasses on, but he seemed to notice her insecurity because he reached over and took her hands in his own. His warm, calloused palm covered her fingers. She hadn't realized she was picking at her nails again.
When you get home, I want you to eat something.
Maddie was a little taken aback. Yeah, for sure.
Good. I don't want you passing out again. Just reminding you. As friends.
He flashed her a grin. Fuck. He was so handsome, his jaw square and sharp. The little cleft in his chin was the manliest thing she had ever seen. She stared at him stupidly for a moment. Then she turned and gazed out the window, her cheeks bright pink. Oh my. Fuck my life. Just a 2-second smile made her forget what she was thinking. The rest of the short drive back to her house was laced with quiet tension. With his hand resting in her lap, Maddie couldn't stop thinking about his sensual kiss in his office, his heated gaze, or the feeling of his tongue caressing her mouth. His calloused fingers remained protectively over her own. His scent filled her with a terrible sense of yearning. The memory of their little makeout session in his office aroused her, and the heat wasn't going away. She felt like some strange, mysterious force had awakened in her blood. It seemed more potent than just regular lust. But what did she know? She was a virgin. She rubbed her thighs together, thinking of his muscular, 6'4" body pressing into her soft curves. Shit. This was hard. How was she supposed to be friends with him, with all this pent-up sexual tension between them? He pulled into her driveway but stayed close to the street, the Camaro hidden from her trailer by a line of pine trees. Maddie was relieved. Dean would freak out if he saw her in his car. Well, I guess this is it, Maddie said awkwardly. She couldn't kiss him goodbye if they were just friends, and a hug over the center console seemed strained. So she opened the passenger side door and swung her feet out onto the gravel.
I think I owe you a driving lesson.
Gareth's words caught her off guard. Maddie's heart leapt despite herself. Oh, right. I didn't think you really wanted to. I mean, we don't have to. I know you're busy. Gareth regarded her through his dark sunglasses. A slow smile curved across his mouth.
I'm not that busy, little girl. You said you got your permit, right? When are you free this week? Let's hang out soon.
Yeah, I got it over the summer. I just need to check my schedule at work. I'll let you know on Monday?
All right, do that.
Okay, I will. She tried not to look as pleased and excited as she felt. They were taking things slow, but she couldn't help herself. The thought of Gareth teaching her how to drive kicked up a storm of aggressive butterflies in her stomach. It definitely checked a box on her super secret fantasy list. She glanced at him out of the corner of her eye, trying to gauge if he was excited too, but she couldn't get a read on him with his sunglasses on. How could he act so casual? He noticed her little side look and gave her a wolfish grin.
Hey, come over anytime. Mi casa su casa. Don't be a stranger.
The way he said it, she felt a delicious shiver down to her toes. Ha, all right, Bye, Gareth. She almost said thank you, but she wasn't sure why.
Call me if you need anything. I mean it.
Yeah, okay, for sure. She shut the door and gave him a little wave. Then she walked back down the driveway toward the trailer, Joker following along on the rope leash. Maddie chewed her lip as she walked. The words "hang out" bothered her the most, but they shouldn't bother her at all. She wanted to be friends with him. She needed to take the pressure off. But her feelings were so conflicted. Damn. Why was she still so aroused? This would be something new and different from what they started last week. How was she supposed to be friends with a guy she'd crushed on for 5 years? Those feelings wouldn't just disappear. Actually, they seemed to have increased tenfold since she exited the Camaro. Dean barely acknowledged Maddie when she came in through the sliding glass door off the back deck. She started for her bedroom at first, then she remembered her promise to Gareth to eat something. As though waking up from a coma, her stomach let out a loud groan. Oh yes. She could definitely eat. Her stomach rumbled again as she went into the kitchen. She felt a sudden, strong craving for chicken. Yum. She rummaged through the fridge. Didn't she remember a pack of chicken breast in the groceries? She checked the freezer. Then Dean called out to her from the living room.
Hey kiddo, what are you looking for?
Where did the chicken breast go?
I cooked it. There's some left in the pan.
Maddie checked the skillet on the stove top. She wrinkled her nose. The chicken breast looked oily and a little burnt, but her stomach rumbled and her craving for protein was strong. She picked up one of the greasy, over-seasoned breasts and bit into it. Dry, as she suspected. But her appetite was suddenly overwhelming. When she finished her first piece, she ended up grabbing another. She finished off what was left in the pan. As she ate, she kept checking her phone for texts from Gareth. She wondered what he was thinking after their conversation in his office. Maybe he wasn't thinking much at all? She imagined him and Vin working together at the garage, blasting music and fixing shit. She almost felt a little jealous of Vin, getting to see Gareth like that, not being a protective boyfriend or a guardian, but just a busy guy at work. It made her smile. She wondered what he was like as a boss. She remembered that glimpse of admiration she had caught in Vin's expression. Again, it made her feel a bit more confident about Gareth. He must be a good boss to inspire that kind of loyalty from an employee.
What are you smiling about?
Dean asked suspiciously as she walked through the living room. Nothing, Joker's just super cute.
Yup, dogs are the best.
Dean eyed her as she walked past him to the hallway. Maddie avoided his gaze.
You meet up with anyone on your walk? You were gone a long time.
Just took the old switchback trail. Maddie was vague on purpose. The hair prickled on her neck. Her stepdad glowered at her for a long moment. Maddie knew he wanted to ask her more. She was gone for several hours, and she didn't come back with laundry detergent. She knew what he was really asking. In her imagination, she could almost hear the question on his lips.
Tell me the truth, Madeline. You getting fucked in the back seat of some shitty broke-down sports car?
He didn't actually ask that question, but Maddie braced herself for it. Then Dean's phone beeped. Someone was texting him. He picked up his phone off the couch and frowned at the screen. With a quiet sigh of relief, she started up the hallway to her room. She shut the door firmly behind her. Then Maddie opened her backpack and spread her schoolwork out on the floor. After a few minutes, the TV's volume turned up in the living room. She forced herself to do makeup homework while her father roared at a football game on the tube. Just like old times. Except for Joker, who pawed at her door after a half hour and slunk under her bed with a whine. She obviously didn't like the noise. You're really not much of a guard dog, Maddie teased her and scratched the nervous pup behind the ears. Around 10 o'clock, she saw the screen on her phone light up. She checked it.
Hey, you should go to bed. You got school tomorrow.
She stared at the text from Gareth in surprise. Fuck, really? How did he know she was awake? Then she glowered at the screen. She started to text him back, angry that he would try to set a bedtime for her. It was a little ridiculous. Then she stopped. She breathed deep. Yeah, well, it was getting late. She had to go to bed soon, anyway. It was kind of sweet, maybe, that he was thinking of her. Fuck that. Her anger came back. She would go to bed because it was her choice, and she was going to do it anyway. Maybe she should leave him on red. But some part of her caved inside. She didn't want to push him away. She touched her lips, suddenly remembering his kiss, his smell. God. A flood of visceral memories assailed her. Fuck. She could still taste his mouth. She wondered what it would be like to feel him inside of her. She couldn't imagine it. A little shiver of anticipation ran down to her toes. She clutched the white bear to her chest that he gave her. She closed her eyes and sucked in a breath. Then she texted him back. Yeah, okay. I'm going to bed now. She typed it out. Sent. Then she dragged herself into bed and lay down. Joker jumped up next to her and curled up against her back. Maddie held her phone in hand, waiting for his reply. Eventually, her screen lit up.
Sleep good, little girl.
Maddie started typing, unable to control herself. Why do you care when I go to sleep? I thought we were just friends. You can't set a bedtime for me. Don't treat me like a kid. She hesitated before hitting send. She read the message over. It sounded bratty and pathetic. She fell asleep with the text unsent on her phone. Thank you for listening to Heart of the Wolf podcast. I told Gareth I wanted to be just friends, but he is definitely not acting like just a friend. Monday is gonna suck. Looks like Kaylee is up to her old antics again at school. Subscribe and stay tuned for the next chapter.